Chapter 4. Prepared to evacuate. I arrive at the central office headquarters earlier than usual. After dropping my wife off at her office, I went straight to the A-17 Division building. Instead of going to teach, even though I had a class that day, I simply couldn't face my students. Last night, I couldn't sleep despite taking sleeping pills. There were too many issues giving me a headache. I had to ask my wife to call in sick for me. The A-17 Division building was bustling, unlike its usual quiet state. I thought it was still early, yet everyone had already shown up. Dep, my boss's secretary, was typing something. Tuan told me she was making a list of employees and their addresses in case of emergencies. At that time in our country, most people didn't have telephones, except for wealthy families or businesses. Communication was usually carried out by couriers, motorbike riders who would search for people to deliver necessary messages. Sometimes we weren't at home, so having an accurate address for emergencies was crucial. I wrote down my mother's address instead of my own because I didn't want to be alone at my house in such situations. Has anything happened at the office yet? I asked Tuan. Not yet. I think we'll have to wait for the boss to arrive to find out. I don't know if other divisions are making lists too, but I suspect something significant is going on. Who will act as couriers? I suppose it'll be Heap and Dying? I think so, but we should come here more often to look after ourselves. Why don't you call your wife over there and ask if there's anything new? Tuan suddenly suggested. I plan to call my wife, as well as Lon and Lynn, so we can get a better idea of what's happening at the agency. With his unshaven beard, Tuan looked older than his 32 years. We often jokingly called him a French hybrid because of his beard and high-nosed bridge. In the early days of joining the agency, Tuan and I often worked together in the Student Activities Unit. We infiltrated student protests to gather information. We enlisted in the military on the same day and trained together at the same camp. After returning to work for the agency, I was assigned to the College of Science while Tuan was at the College of Literature. But we often supported each other. Tuan's wife was also a classmate of my wife, and we occasionally went out together, which made Tuan and me close friends. I think we're on the edge of a cliff, Tuan interrupted. My wife and I are considering leaving as soon as possible. I hope you both succeed. Your situation is relatively easier than mine. My wife is heavily pregnant, and I can only wait for the agency's plans. Besides, I don't think an intelligence agency would fail to have a contingency plan for its employees in such critical times. I hope so, but at the very least, we should think about it. I had no idea our country's situation had deteriorated so badly, Tuan said worriedly. Everyone in our division was discussing the dire state of the country, though we weren't sure how bad it was. We couldn't imagine losing the country. We only thought of a major battle with the VC when they entered Saigon. Rumors said we might retreat to Region 4 in the Mekong Delta to resist the VC. But the battle at Siem Loc was still ongoing. Working in an agency focused on political issues, we didn't know much about military affairs. That was our weakness. In a country ravaged by prolonged war, political, military, and economic issues were all entangled. Military leaders becoming political leaders only created further chaos. The country lacked a great leader who could unify the people's strength against the enemy. Vice Prime Minister Tran Van Hung, representing the South, held no real power, while President Nguyen Van Thieu, a lieutenant general, failed to represent the military. Each general acted as a king in their own region, wielding personal power. Divisions among the generals deepened over time, eroding soldiers' trust. Air Force Major General Nguyen Chau Kai, former vice president, and General Duong Van Minh joined forces with the Nquon Buddhist faction and the so-called Third Force to oppose the president. They all demanded President Thieu's resignation. I doubted they could do anything for the country if they gained power. Some bright stars in the political arena, like Nguyen Van Bong, director of the National Administration School and chairman of the Progressive Party, had been assassinated. I believe the best solution was national unity. As the Vietnamese proverb says, "United we live, divided we die." I didn't blame the leaders for losing the country, but they were the ones holding the nation's destiny. An old saying said, "One general's victory comes at the cost of thousands of skeletons." I thought, one general's failure comes at the cost of millions of skeletons. I called my wife at the recruitment office and my sister-in-law in the research division. They had also made lists for their staff. We understood this was a bad sign for the country. However, we didn't know how bad it was or what we should do about it. Should we flee abroad like many others, prepare to fight the VC when they entered Saigon, or retreat to the Mekong Delta as rumored? We didn't know what to do. Simply making a list wouldn't solve anything. We wanted clear explanations, and we were waiting for the boss to arrive. Long walked into the room quickly. We looked at each other with concern. This was unusual, as he typically stopped by the hall to chat with us before heading to his private office. We anxiously awaited his words. Half an hour later, he emerged, looking dejected. "I regret to inform you that we are facing difficult and dangerous times. There is significant pressure on the president to resign, and I don't know whether he will. I also don't know who will replace President Thieu if he does resign. The vice president is only a temporary solution. Furthermore, I can't predict the country's future under these circumstances. We are compiling lists as ordered by the higher-ups, but I don't know why. I hope we can remain calm in every situation. Let's continue working as usual and support each other." Long's many "I don't knows" left us more uncertain than ever. We hadn't expected such vague statements. In this situation, we believe the leaders should clearly present the truth to their staff rather than hiding behind ambiguous language. We didn't care who the president would be. We wanted to know the state of the country and how we should respond. I thought Long himself was confused because he was related to Mrs. Thieu. If President Thieu resigned, Long would lose his backing and potentially his position. Perhaps he was more concerned about his status than the nation's fate. Long was a strong candidate for the position of Special Commissioner. Despite being young and not a military officer, he had succeeded in most of his assignments and was more educated than many other leaders in the agency. In our division, most staff had graduated from high school and some from university. To manage such a team, Long had more advantages than a military officer. Even though the agency was led by the military, after speaking, Long left. Tuan, Bon, and I went to Lapagoda Cafe as usual before meeting our collaborators. "Do you think President Thieu will resign?" I started. "I think he will, as people seem to dislike him after his uncontested election win. However, I don't know who could become president now." Bon replied quickly, "I think Generals Duong Van Minh and Nguyen Chao Kai are the most likely candidates. I feel Big Min has already led once and didn't achieve anything for the country. As for Kai, he's a cowboy in the military. How could he lead the nation in this situation?" Tuan added, "I agree. For me, changing horses midstream isn't a good solution right now. Thieu isn't perfect in his role, but if I had to choose among these three, I'd pick him. Besides, I don't know anyone better suited at this moment." I concluded, "In my view, some generals in the so-called Third Force want to negotiate with the Viet Cong for peace in the country, but how can we trust the communists?" Tuan said, "That's right. The Americans no longer want what they call the Vietnam War. The American public thinks this is a civil war between North and South Vietnam. They want us to resolve our own conflict. They don't care that this is a war between communism and capitalism, in which we are the victims. I think the Americans want President Thieu to resign and resolve the war through negotiations, and that is the main pressure. Bond said, as quick-tongued as ever. Bond looked comical at 26, lacking a mustache under his beard. He was a relative on the maternal side of the Du Quien family in Maido City. Du Quien knew the mayor of Saigon was his uncle. I also heard that the Du Quien family was related to Mrs. Thieu, the First Lady. When a leader places their relatives in important positions, it means they don't trust their subordinates. That is also why other forces have opportunities to oppose them. The collapse of the First Republic and the deaths of President Ngo Dinh Diem and his brothers, Ngo Dinh Nhu and Ngo Dinh Can, are clear evidence. The Buddhist clergy played a key role in the overthrow of the First Republic, and now they are again playing an important role in opposing President Thieu. The third force doesn't have real power except for Generals Kai and Big Men, and the two differ significantly. Others like lawyer No Ba Tan, attorney Tran Ngoc Lien, Professor Chow Tam Muan, and Nun Huyen Lien relied mainly on the Nquang Buddhist temple. In truth, the Viet Cong infiltrated these groups. The Viet Cong's main manpower, the students, have been surrounded by our student groups since 1972, after we succeeded in reclaiming the Saigon Student Union from Huynh Tan Mam, a communist. The VC could no longer exploit the students, so they formed groups like the Youth for Hunger Relief and the Beggar Journalist Group to disrupt the capital situation. Apart from some forces opposing President Thieu, the capital remained peaceful after the announcement of the retreat from Buon My Thuoc and the Nang provinces. People believe Nguyen Van Thieu was an obstacle to peace, with pressure from all sides urging his resignation. Since our agency operated under presidency, any change in leadership would mean changes in our agency too. Do you think a change in presidency could lead our country to peace? I asked. I don't think so, Tuan said gloomily. We've changed leaders many times, and it has only made things worse. I agree. After the First Republic was overthrown, the Americans brought in their troops, escalating the war further. Our country has seen many leadership changes, but no one could stabilize a situation like Ngo Dinh Diem. Bond added, I think our leaders only care about power struggles and not the fate of the country. Tuan said, I feel sorry for them because we have to serve people who think only of their own interests. We are young, and we want to bring peace to the country. I think if the VC weren't so devoted to communism, it might be better to hand over the country to them so the people could have peace. I said earnestly, I think so too. We're tired of the war. For hundreds of years, we haven't had the chance to build our country. Bond said, I hope that one day there will be no more war, so we can do the things we dream of doing. I went to the Sing Sing restaurant on Phan, Din Fung Street, to meet some collaborators, but Lu didn't show up as planned. Nan, Nia, Trung, Tam, Vin, Tri, and Lam hoped to learn something. I repeated what I had heard from my boss and urged them to do what was necessary to save themselves. They were young collaborators who had helped me reclaim the College of Science Student Union early on. Nan, the group leader, had lost a leg. I never asked what had happened to him. He always seemed cheerful. These young men were only junior science students but worked effectively. In this situation, they were too young to determine their future, and all they could do was wait for the agency's plan. I knew they were waiting for a clear explanation, not the vague words I had just said. I spoke awkwardly. I know I haven't given you what you expected, and I am as worried as you are. My situation is probably harder than yours. I'm sorry. I think we must resolve our own issues rather than rely too much on the agency. I hope you understand what I mean. From that day, I stayed at my mother's house to ensure I wouldn't miss any communication from the agency. While I advised my collaborators to handle things independently, I still relied on the agency myself. Lan, Feng, Tai, and I played four colors cards while chatting. Feng was Lan's younger brother and a Navy sergeant. He used to stay at my mother's house when he was still in school and later married a seamstress from my mother's tailoring shop. I told him about the events at my agency that morning and the preparations being made. I believe they were as worried as I was about their family's safety. In our country, men were the heads of the family and made all important decisions. Lan had 3 young children. Feng had just 1, and only Tai was single, so he only needed to worry about himself. The main topic of our conversation was the country situation and how to escape if things got worse. With 3 of us working for the Vietnamese Navy, evacuating by ship seemed relatively easy. However, I still trusted and depended on the agency's plan. I shared my thoughts with them, and they agreed. Later, Lin and I went to his sister's house. His brother-in-law, Thursday, who was a general director in the Ministry of People Mobilization, met with us as planned. Do you have any evacuation plans if an emergency arises? Lin asked directly. Not yet, Thursday replied hastily. But few things happened at the ministry this morning. What happened? Lin asked anxiously. Minister Hong Duk Na said there was significant pressure on the president to resign, and it seems he may have to give in. I don't know when or what will happen, but we are preparing for this change since Na is related to President Yu. I've heard that, I explained, and this morning our agency also prepared a list of staff. I also heard yesterday that Nguyen Coc Bin might hand over his position to Nguyen Phat Loc, but it hasn't happened yet. I think that will happen soon. Lin added, what do you think about the state of the country? I think it's extremely complicated. The Americans want us to solve the war ourselves, but they're applying pressure from all directions. Some generals want the president to resign to negotiate with the VC, but they don't know how to deal with the communists who never honor agreements. I'm not sure who will become president if Thieu resigns. Nguyen Chao Kai and Duong Van Minh are the top candidates. If it's Kai, there will likely be war instead of negotiations. On the other hand, Minh is supported by the Third Force, which is cooperating with the VC. I don't know what will happen if Big Minh takes power. Tu An Sua Can Di Li. We came to ask if you have any personal plans if the situation worsens. Ling In Te Zup. We need our own contingency plans and cannot rely entirely on the government or the Americans. I don't have any concrete plans yet, but I've been thinking about it. I believe we'll have enough time to leave if the situation escalates. Do you remember when we fled the North after the Geneva Accords? I don't think the country will fall so quickly that we won't have time to prepare. I realized Thursday hadn't devised a plan yet because he didn't want to lose his current position. After some polite conversation, we said our goodbyes. Lin seemed slightly disappointed, as he had hoped his brother-in-law could help him with the situation.